So basically in college, you're gonna encounter many different types of chemistry. If you're considering the pre-med pathway or any science pathway, you'll go through general chemistry, organic chemistry, inorganic chemistry. Um, and so today we want to give like a brief introduction to chemistry, and Michelle and our team of interns put together this presentation to kind of go over some foundational concepts in chemistry that will help you when you encounter it later on.
Um, Hi everyone. Yeah, so we're gonna talk about chemistry. So, what is chemistry? Chemistry is a scientific exploration of matter, its properties, and the transformation it undergoes. It investigates the structure of atoms and molecules, interactions between substances, and energy transformations during chemical reactions. This branch of science delves into the composition, structure, and behavior of substances, playing a vital role in our everyday life existence, from the air we breathe and the food we eat to the medicines we take and the materials we use. Some examples of chemical properties include flammability, toxicity, acidity, many types of reactivity, and heat of combustion. Next slide, please.
Right, so we'll go into the different branches of chemistry. So, as I mentioned before, organic chemistry focuses on compounds containing carbon. So, in an organic chemistry class, you would study the structures, properties, compositions, reactions, and different types of preparation. And these kind of courses are based mostly in problem solving. In inorganic chemistry, these are compounds specifically that don't involve carbon. So you'll learn about salts, acids, bases, water, metals, and minerals. And there's also physical chemistry, which is an elective in most colleges. And this is studying the principles, properties, and behavior of matter at a molecular and atomic level. And this is incorporating more physics and math. In some colleges, they offer analytical chemistry, where you're looking at the chemical composition and structure of matter, and this includes methods for determining which substances are present and in what amounts. Um, so in organic chemistry, you learn about like NMR. So there's like different graphs, and the different peaks can tell you what atoms are contained in the molecule. Um, and then biochemistry is kind of combining what you learn in chemistry and what you learn in biology. So it's more specifically this chemical processes that happen within living organisms. And this is a really big part of the pre-med pathway. So you'll learn about metabolism. These are the chemical reactions that break down food to release energy, or to build up larger molecules from smaller ones. So you have catabolism and anabolism, and then DNA replication and protein synthesis. This is how genetic information is copied and used to create proteins. So we've talked about this a little bit in our past presentations. And then enzyme catalyzed reactions are specific reactions that are sped up by enzymes. And so if you take biochemistry, you'll kind of learn to draw these molecules and how the molecules interact with the enzyme to speed up the reaction that's supposed to occur.
And now we will dive into matter and its properties. So the definition of matter is anything that has mass and takes up space. So this means that the object has some kind of volume and can be weighed. And there are many different states of matter, which we'll talk about it later. And even things like air, which may feel like you may not feel like there's much mass to it, but there's a very small amount to it, which counts. And things as big as stars or small as pebbles all are considered matter. And then next up, we have physical properties. So the definition is that characteristics that can be observed without changing the substance chemical compositions, which basically means a characteristic of an object without changing anything. And some of them include like the object's mass, volume, color, density, conductivity, and etc. And some of the interesting ones that I found were luster, which is how shiny and reflected an object is. Ductility, it's like how stretchy it is, and viscosity, which is like uh how sticky the solution is. And lastly, we have chemical compositions. The definition is ability to undergo a chemical reaction to turn into a new substance with different properties, which means like it's asking in what way and how much an object can interact with another object. So I think we already talked about it, but flammability, object toxicity, acidity, those stuff. And the interesting one was enthalpy of formation, which is how much heat is released or absorbed when a compound is formed, like when it's together. And then chemical bonds, which is not really a measurement, but it's also considered chemical properties because it's formed when like the two atoms combine.
Now for states of matter. So matter is anything that has a mass and it takes up space. It exists in four main states: solid, liquid, gas, and plasma. And each state is determined by how much energy the particles, like atoms or molecules, have and how they interact with each other. So solid particles don't have enough energy to move around, so they stay in one place and are packed tightly together. And the forces between them are really strong, so they can't really move past each other. And like some examples are ice, rock, and metal. Liquid particles are close together and always touching, but they don't have enough energy and they have enough energy to move around and slide past each other. And the forces between them are strong, but not strong enough to keep them in one place. And examples are water, oil, and milk. And gas particles have a lot of energy and move around freely in all directions, and they only bump into each other when they collide by chance. And the forces between them are very weak, so they don't stay close together. And examples are oxygen, carbon dioxide, and helium. And lastly, plasma is like gas, but the particles are charged, so they have lost and gained electrons, and these particles move very fast and have a lot of energy. And plasma is found in places with very high temperature, such as sun, lighting, and neon signs.
Okay, so um, a scientific method in chemistry is just the approach that scientists would use to explore observations, answer questions, and solve problems. So the first one is we're asking questions. So we would ask a question about the observation, so what we're trying to solve. And then the second one is the hypothesis. So we would make like an educated guess, and it should be something that we can test. So for example, it would be like, I think baking soda and vinegar create gas because of a chemical reaction. And the third one would be to experiment. So we would design and perform the test. And then fourth would be data collection. So we would use tools to gather information and we would write down what we see and measure. And then we have conclusions. So we would interpret the results. So do they support our hypothesis and so on.
Okay, so next is atomic structure. Atoms are the fundamental building blocks of all matter and the basic particles for elements. They consist of three components: protons, positively charged particles in the center of the atom, and the center of the atom is also known as the nucleus. Neutrons, which are uncharged particles in the nucleus, and electrons, which are negatively charged particles that are much smaller than the previous two, and they orbit around the nucleus. Atomic number is the number of protons in an atom, and mass number is the number of protons plus the number of neutrons in an atom.
Okay, next we have the periodic table of elements. So this was developed by Dmitry Mendeleev in 1869. The way it's organized is in the rows and the columns. So it's arranged according to the number of protons in the nucleus, or its atomic number. There are 7 rows called periods, and you can determine how many electron shells the element has, going from up where hydrogen is to down. And there are 18 columns called groups that you can use to determine how many electrons are on the valence shell. So excluding the transition metals in the little blue columns in the middle, it'll go from 1 to 8 from left to right. So groups usually have similar properties. So group 1, excluding hydrogen on the top, are alkali metals. Group 2 are alkaline earth metals. Group 3 to 12, which are excluded in the valence shells, those are transition metals, and your neon green kind of staircase structure, those are post-transition metals. The other green ones that are also in the little staircase are your metalloids, and your yellow group, excluding group 17, are other nonmetals. And group 17 are halogens, while group 18, the final column, are noble gases.
Okay, so next we're going to be talking about the atomic number and mass number. An atomic number can be defined as the exact number of protons in the nucleus of each atom. And since we need, in a neutral atom, we need the proton and the electrons to be the same number so it can hold the shape of the atom. They will be the same number if the atom is uncharged. And also in the mass number would be described as the sum of the protons and neutrons present in the nucleus of the atom. So to find the number of neutrons, we would just minus it. We would minus the mass number by the atomic number to find the number of neutrons. And in our example on the side, we can see the element carbon. And on the top, we see that it is the atomic number. And then on the bottom, it is the mass number. So if we just minus the mass number with the atomic number, we can find the neutron number.
Isotopes and ions. Isotopes are atoms of the same element that have the same number of protons, but a different number of neutrons. For example, hydrogen has 3 isotopes, protium, deuterium, and tritium. They all have 1 proton, but they differ in the amount of neutrons. Some isotopes, like tritium, are unstable. Unstable isotopes or radioisotopes are atoms with too many or too few neutrons, making them radioactive. These unstable atoms go through a process called radioactive decay, where the nucleus breaks down and releases energy as radiation. So they can become more stable. Now moving on to ions. Ions are atoms that have gained or lost electrons. If an atom loses electrons, it becomes a cation and has a positive charge. If it gains electrons, however, it becomes an anion and has a negative charge.
Okay, so we'll move on to chemical bonding. So chemical bonding is the most basic fundamentals of chemistry that explains other concepts like molecules and reactions. There's 3 main types of chemical bondings, and that includes ionic bonding, covalent bonding, and metallic bonding. So ionic bonding is the process where electrons are transferred from one metal atom to a non-metal atom. And this results in the formation of ions, charged particles. And then next is covalent bonding. That's the process where electrons are shared between 2 non-metal atoms. This results in a stable molecule by forming a full electron shell. And lastly, metallic bonding is where the electrostatic attraction between positively charged ions and a sea of electrons. And this results in a formation of positively charged ions.
Molecules and compounds. Molecules are 2 or more atoms bonded together, and these atoms bond together by covalent bonding, by sharing electrons to form molecules. Compounds are molecules composed of 2 or different types of elements. These molecules bond together by ionic or covalent bonding to form compounds. And these molecules and compounds has structures, shapes, and the polarity of these, which affects their behavior and reactions. The structures is how they are connected and bonded. For example, ethanol, CH3CH2OH, is safe to drink, yet dimethyl ether, which has like the same amount of molecules, CH3OCH3, is structured differently, is a gas used in spray cans. And their shades how the 3D arrangement of the atoms around the central atom affect the polarity. The polarity is how unevenly electrons sharing affects the molecules by giving it a direction or polarity.
The law of conservation of mass states that in a closed system, the total mass of the substance before physical or chemical change is equal to the total mass of the substance after the change. This basically means that matter can't appear or disappear for no reason. It only changes the form. For example, you have exactly 20 Lego blocks and build something with it. No matter what you build, you will still have 20 Lego blocks.
So a chemical reaction is one or more substance changes into one or more new substances. So you have your reactions on the left side of the arrow and then your products on the right side of the arrow. So a reactant is a substance that's being changed or the substance that's inputted into the reaction. So in the top case here, you would have carbon dioxide and water, which is represented by CO2 and H2O. And the product is the new substance that's made or the substance that's being outputted from the reaction. And in the top case here, that would be glucose and oxygen. And these reactions you should probably recognize from some of our past presentations on photosynthesis and cellular respiration.
All right, so now acids, bases, and pH. So have you ever had like lemonade and thought, whoa, that's really sour, and that sour taste is because of an acid? Now imagine washing your hands with soap. It's very slippery, right? The slipperiness is often the base. So I'm sure you've at least tried putting baking soda and vinegar together at some point, maybe at like a science fair volcano or just for fun at home. And as you probably saw, it makes this fizzy, bubbly explosion, right? Well, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because it's one of the best examples on how acid and base react together. So vinegar is an acid, baking soda is the base, and when they meet, there's a big fizz. This is called neutralization reaction, and it releases carbon dioxide gas. And this neutralization reaction is when an acid and a base react with each other and balance each other out. So you can think of an acid and a base like two opposite forces, and when they come together, they balance each other out. And that's why it's called neutralization. They make a solution that is more neutral, not super acidic or super basic anymore. So the pH scale. The pH scale goes from 0 to 14, and it tells us how acidic or basic something is. So 0 to 6 is acidic, 7 is neutral, is not an acid or a base, and 8 to 14 is basic, or sometimes it's called like alkaline. So you can think of this scale as a personality scale, right? If a substance scores low, like 0 to 6, it's an acid, maybe a little bit intense. And if it's in the middle at 7, it is like very calm and balanced, like water. And if it scores higher, 8 to 14, its base is cool and slippery and it's chill. So why do acids and bases and pH matter? So our stomach uses to digest food, and the soaps and cleaners that we use are bases and sometimes a little acidic depending on what type of cleaner you're using. Also, you need a very balanced pH in your body to stay healthy. And for the environment, like the plants and wildlife and the lakes, need the right pH to develop properly. This stuff isn't just for science class, it helps your body, your house, and your planet running smoothly.
All right, so now moving on to the mole concept. So a mole in chemistry is a unit of measurement in chemistry. with the units mole or mole without the E for short. And it can be referred to the chemist's dozen. This is because a mole refers to 6.022 times 10 to the 23rd molecules or atoms. And just like a dozen, it refers to a set amount of items. So for a dozen, there would be 12 items. So for example, a dozen eggs is 12 eggs. And you can say that there is 1 mole of marbles, which means that there would be 6.022 times 10 to the 23rd marbles. However, the mole unit is most often used to refer to the amount of molecules or atoms in a set amount of moles of a substance. Moles are very useful for precise approximations between the molecular level and the life size, such as finding out how many molecules are in this element of this amount of grams. In certain periodic tables, there is a number under the symbol of the element. As mentioned earlier, it's called the atomic mass. So the atomic mass is measured in grams, and it tells you how many grams are in 1 mole, or 6.022 times 10 to the 23rd atoms. So this number is named interchangeably with atomic mass and molar mass, while atomic mass refers to the weight of 1 atom, and the molar mass is the weight of a mole of atoms. So this is useful for precise conversions depending on which unit you're trying to find. So looking at the element oxygen, for example, it has a molar mass of around 15.999. This means that 1 mole of a single oxygen is, or 6.022 times 10 to the 23rd oxygen atoms, approximately weighs 15.999 grams. However, oxygen is an element that usually comes in a pair. So actually, 1 mole of oxygen, or O2, you would have to multiply it by 2, since there are 2 atoms in oxygen. So it would be around 32. And 6.022 times 20 times 10 to the 23rd is also referred as Avogadro's number.
Okay, and that's all for today. Thank you everyone for participating and completing your slide. Yeah.